On August 24, 2006, a group of scientists walked into a conference room in Prague and committed a murder. They didn't use a weapon. They used a vote. In a room full of astronomers, hands went up, slips of paper were counted, and in a matter of minutes, a world that had existed for 76 years was erased from the history books. The headlines the next day were brutal.
We welcome you back. It's time for our daily holiday this morning. So it is Pluto demoted day today.
Pluto is dead. The solar system shrinks. School textbooks became obsolete overnight. Children actually sent hate mail to planetariums. We felt like we had lost a friend, but here's the twist that nobody talks about. At the exact moment those scientists were voting to kill Pluto, a spacecraft was already halfway there. It was called New Horizons. It had launched 7 months earlier, carrying the ashes of the man who discovered Pluto. It was traveling at 36,000 miles per hour, racing toward the edge of the solar system to visit the 9th planet. When it launched, it was headed for a planet. By the time it arrived, it was visiting a dwarf. But when the robot finally opened its eyes in 2015, it didn't find a dead, boring rock. It didn't find the mistake that the scientists said it was. It found something that shocked the entire world. It found a world with blue skies, beating hearts, and volcanoes spewing ice. Today we are going to tell the true story of Pluto. Not the story of how it died, but the story of how it fought back. This is the story of the king of the Kuiper Belt, and why, no matter what the textbooks say, it is still the most misunderstood object in our universe. To understand the tragedy, you have to go back to the beginning. You have to go back to 1930 to a farm boy named Clyde Tombaugh. Clyde wasn't a fancy professor with a PhD. He was a 24-year-old intern at the Lowell Observatory in Arizona. His job was tedious. Every single night, he had to take photos of the same patch of sky, night after night, and then use a machine called a blink comparator to flip back and forth between them. He was looking for a dot that moved. Astronomers knew there was something out there. The math said that a massive planet X was tugging on the gravity of Neptune. They were looking for a giant. On February 18, 1930, Clyde found it, a tiny, faint speck moving against the stars. The world went crazy. This was the first planet discovered by an American. It needed a name. An 11-year-old girl in England suggested Pluto, the Roman god of the underworld, because the planet sat in eternal darkness far from the sun. But almost immediately, things didn't add up. The astronomers expected a gas giant like Neptune. Instead, they got a pinprick. They realized Pluto was small. First, they thought it was the size of Earth, then the size of Mars. As our telescopes got better, Pluto kept shrinking. By the 1970s, we realized it was actually smaller than our own moon. This was the first crack in the armor. How could this tiny ball of ice be the massive planet X that was pulling on Neptune? The answer turned out to be embarrassing. It wasn't. The math was wrong. Neptune wasn't being pulled by anything. We had discovered Pluto by pure accident. It was a cosmic coincidence. And for decades, that's all Pluto was. A mistake. A weird, lonely oddball at the edge of the map. It had a weird orbit that was tilted compared to everyone else. It was made of ice when everyone else was made of gas or rock. But it was our oddball. We memorized the mnemonic. My very educated mother just served us 9 pizzas. Pluto was the pizza. It belonged. Until the late 1990s, technology improved. We started building better telescopes. And suddenly we started finding other things in the dark. Astronomers realized that Pluto wasn't alone. It was sitting in the middle of a massive ring of debris called the Kuiper Belt. There were thousands of icy rocks out there. Some were big, some were small. And then, in 2005, an astronomer named Mike Brown found something that changed everything. He found a rock called Eris. Eris was a problem. It was roughly the same size as Pluto. In fact, for a while we thought it was bigger. This forced the scientific community into a corner. If Pluto is a planet, then Eris has to be a planet too. And if Eris is a planet, what about Makemake? What about Haumea? What about Sedna? If they kept Pluto, we wouldn't have 9 planets. We would have 20, then 50, then 100. The solar system was getting too crowded. The first shot was fired by the Hayden Planetarium in New York. The director, Neil deGrasse Tyson, decided to remove Pluto from the exhibit of planets. he lumped it in with the icy debris. He famously said,
Pluto is a very healthy Kuiper Belt object, but a really lame planet.
The public was furious, but the damage was done. The seed was planted. Which brings us back to that conference room in Prague in 2006. The International Astronomical Union, IAU, decided to settle the debate once and for all. They needed a definition for the word planet. Surprisingly, before 2006, science didn't actually have a strict definition. They came up with 3 rules. To be a planet, you must orbit the sun, you must be round, spherical. You must have cleared your neighborhood. Pluto passed the first 2. It orbits the sun, it is round. But it failed number 3. Because Pluto lives in the Kuiper Belt, it is surrounded by thousands of other debris. Its gravity is too weak to kick them out or suck them up. It hasn't cleared its neighborhood. On the final day of the conference, only 424 astronomers remained in the room. That is less than 5% of the world's astronomers. They held up yellow cards. The vote passed. Pluto was stripped of its title. It was reclassified as Dwarf Planet 134340. It felt like a demotion. It felt like we were saying Pluto wasn't good enough. It was just a piece of space junk, a dead, frozen leftover from the formation of the solar system. But the universe has a sense of irony, because while the humans were arguing about labels, the spacecraft New Horizons was closing in, and it was about to prove everyone wrong. On July 14, 2015, after a 9-year journey, New Horizons flew past Pluto. It was moving so fast that it couldn't stop. It had one shot. It had to take as many photos as possible in a few hours. The signal took 4.5 hours to get back to Earth. When the first high-resolution image loaded on the screens at NASA, the room went silent. Then they gasped. They expected a cratered, dead gray rock like our moon. Instead, staring back at them was a giant white heart, a perfect, massive, heart-shaped glacier made of nitrogen ice, stretching across the planet's surface. It was beautiful, but scientifically, it was impossible. You see, craters are like a clock. The more craters a planet has, the older the surface is. If a surface is smooth, it means something erased the craters recently. It means the planet is geologically alive. The heart, named Sputnik Planitia, was smooth. It didn't have a single crater. This meant Pluto wasn't a dead relic. It was active, it was resurfacing itself. As the data kept pouring in, the mystery deepened. They found mountains made of water ice that were 11,000 feet high, as tall as the Rockies. But water ice at those temperatures is as hard as granite. They found a blue haze in the atmosphere. Pluto has a sky. If you stood on the surface and looked up at the sun, the sky would look blue, just like on Earth. But the most shocking discovery was the volcanoes. New Horizons spotted massive mountains with deep holes in the center. But these weren't spewing lava. They were spewing ice. Cryovolcanoes, slushy mixtures of water, nitrogen, and ammonia erupting from the core to pave over the surface. This shouldn't be happening. Pluto is tiny. It is far from the sun. Its core should have frozen solid billions of years ago. Where is the heat coming from? We still don't know for sure. Some scientists think there might be a radioactive core keeping it warm. Others think there is a subsurface ocean, a liquid water ocean buried under the ice, sloshing around and generating heat. Think about that. The world we call dead, the world we threw out of the club. It might have an ocean. It might have the ingredients for life. And then there is the atmosphere. Pluto breathes. When Pluto gets closer to the sun, its ice sublimates. It turns into gas and inflates the atmosphere. When it moves away, the atmosphere freezes and falls back down as snow, red snow. The organic compounds on the surface, called tholins, turn red under the UV light of the sun. So Pluto isn't gray. It is a stunning mix of white, cream, and deep crimson red. The dwarf planet 134,340 turned out to be more complex, more active, and more planet-like than Mars or Mercury. So, did we make a mistake? Many scientists, including the lead investigator of the New Horizons mission, Alan Stern, say yes. They argue that the definition of planet is flawed. Remember the rule that killed Pluto? Clearing the neighborhood. Well, if you put Earth out where Pluto is, Earth wouldn't be able to clear that neighborhood either. The space is too big. Does that mean Earth isn't a planet? If you look at Jupiter, it has Trojan asteroids sharing its orbit. It hasn't cleared its neighborhood. Is Jupiter not a planet? The definition was created by astronomers, people who study orbits. But for planetary scientists, people who study the worlds themselves, Pluto is absolutely a planet. It has geology, it has weather, it has moons, it has a core. It creates its own heat. It does everything a planet does, except follow the traffic rules. But perhaps the label doesn't matter. When New Horizons flew past Pluto and looked back, it took one final photo. It showed Pluto as a dark silhouette, surrounded by a glowing blue ring of atmosphere, with the sun distant and small in the background. It looked majestic. We humans love to categorize things. We love to put things in boxes. This is a planet. This is a dwarf. This is an asteroid. It makes us feel in control. But the universe doesn't care about our boxes. Pluto doesn't care that we voted it out. It doesn't care that we rewrote the textbooks. It is out there right now, spinning in the dark, churning its nitrogen glaciers, erupting its ice volcanoes, and nursing its hidden ocean. It is the king of the Kuiper Belt. It is the gatekeeper to the unknown. And in a way, the demotion was the best thing that ever happened to it. Before, it was just the 9th planet, the smallest one, the weird one. Now it is the rebel. It is the underdog. It is the world that refused to be boring. So the next time someone tells you Pluto isn't a planet, you can tell them the truth. Pluto is something much, much cooler. It is a survivor.